First and foremost, congratulations. Welcome to the fall 2021 class. We're very excited to welcome you at the Hawk Talk today for our English program. There's a lot to be covered and we have the experts in the field to do it for you. Just a few housekeeping items before we get going. There's a Q&A button on the bottom of your screen somewhere or wherever the Zoom world puts it for you on your device. We are totally open for questions. So if you have questions about anything that you're hearing from our faculty members today, or even some of the students, definitely put them in the Q&A box. We will answer them after the session during a live Q&A session. So if you have any questions, again, don't forget to put them there. Once again, congratulations, and let's get right into the English department overview. Sarah, they're all yours.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Sarah Chin. I'm the chair of the English department, and I want to talk a little bit about what's great about being an English major in general, and then about the English major at Hunter in particular. So the fact that you're here means you probably want to be an English major, and there are so many terrific reasons to be in the English major. I mean, one is just for the pleasure of working with literature and language. I'm sure all of you are readers and writers. And I think for me, the most valuable parts of being an English major are that it teaches a kind of empathy, that you see the world through other people's eyes, and that you learn to write intelligently, persuasively, and critically. And it also opens up a world of both imagination and analysis. At least that's what I found. Probably the biggest question that we get, not just from students, but also from parents, is what can you do with an English major? And the stereotype is usually, oh, well, you become a teacher. And it's true that a lot of our majors do go into teaching. And in fact, we have a teaching track in the major, but ultimately the majority of our majors do all kinds of things, right? I mean, you've got critical thinking, creativity, interpretation, analysis. So studying English prepares you for a diversity of professional fields, including journalism, law, publishing, medicine, the fine arts, management, PR, advertising, and even technology fields. So because the one thing that employers say is important to them is communication skills, being an English major really sets you up for that. You're used to talking in a group of people. All of our classes are 30 students or fewer. So, and we're really focused on discussion and student participation. So you're used to talking in front of a crowd. You're used to presenting your ideas. You also learn how to research, think critically, and use your creativity. And if you're thinking about going to law school, an English BA is an ideal preparation in critical reading and writing. And in fact, fun fact, English majors have among the highest scores on the LSAT, the preparatory exam to go to law school. So those of you who are thinking of being lawyers, great choice to be an English major. So I want to talk a little bit about our major and how it works. So we have several tracks within the major. We have what's sort of the classic English major, which we call Literatures, Languages, and Criticism, which is the English or the literatures in English. And we offer a wide array of classes from, very introductory survey courses in British literature, American literature, Caribbean literature, Native American, African American, Asian American, Latina literature, and then a lot of specialized seminars, depending on what your interests are. We also have a creative writing track, which Ben, our student representative, is going to talk about since he's in that track. And usually what students do is they specialize by genre. So you start by taking an introduction to creative writing, and then you can focus on poetry, fiction, or creative nonfiction. We have a linguistics and rhetoric track, which Professor McFerrin is going to talk about. And finally, we have an adolescence education track, which is for people who want to teach in high school or middle school. We are one of the larger majors at Hunter, which is unusual these days. And the thing that students say that they like most about being an English major is our faculty. As I mentioned, our classes are small, they are intimate. Once you get to the seminar level, you're looking at 15 to 20 students in a class. And also our faculty are leaders in the field. They are nationally and internationally recognized scholars, but they're also terrific teachers. We take teaching very, very seriously. We really value our students. I know when people say to me, you know, what's the best thing about teaching at Hunter? I always say the students. Students at Hunter in general, and in our major in particular, are bright, interesting, interested, can express their ideas in a sophisticated and thought-provoking way. And so there's something about the English classroom that I find extremely exciting and enlivening. I should tell you, by the way, my area of specialization is 19th century American literature. So if you've read The Scarlet Letter, you've read a book that I talk about. But we have faculty in basically every field, in literature, linguistics, rhetoric, and creative writing, from medieval all the way through to contemporary, sociolinguistics. We have poets, novelists, memoirists who have won major national prizes. In fact, one of our fiction writers won a National Book Award a few years ago. So you're going to be having really the people who are at the top of their field in the classroom with you at a low, low CUNY price. So I think that's all I have to say right now. Professor McFerrin, I'm going to throw it over to you to talk about linguistics and rhetoric a little bit. And then if you want to throw it back to me as well, that's fine.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, Professor Chin. I was just writing down while you were talking, I was going to say exactly the same thing. I think it's true about Hunter in general that the faculty are world-class, but also great teachers, but it's so true in the English department. I think you'll hear this from many English students, that you'll be with professors who are, you know, going around the world, going around the country to present their work, but are really, really dedicated teachers as well. And so you have that great entree into so many different discussions. And a lot of us bring our own work into the classroom. So depending on the field and the course, you'll be reading and learning kind of, you know, the cutting edge stuff in English, you know, linguistics and creative writing. So I myself am an applied linguist or a sociolinguist. So that's a little different than maybe what you'd see in some English departments, which actually is another kind of maybe a perk of our department is linguistics sometimes is its own department. But my background is TESOL, which is teaching English to speakers of other languages. So I was a university English, you know, for a teacher for many years, and that's what I did my research on. And then many of my students now in the linguistics track go on to that kind of a master's degree or to teaching English in the K-12 or university setting. So the linguistics and rhetoric track, also like the general English literature track, will prepare you for teaching maybe a little more specific kind of language teaching, as well as all the other things Professor Chin mentioned about law school, or just in general understanding how language works, how English works, and being able to analyze you know, English in all the different ways you may do in your future careers. In particular, I suppose if you haven't heard about linguistics, we look at language and how it works kind of from that like sentence level on up. So we look at like the sounds of language. We look at you'll take our Structure of Modern English course, which will do that kind of the phonology to the meanings, the morphology, to the syntax, to the bigger questions. So I can go on more about what linguistics is and what rhetoric is. Rhetoric is more the persuasive discourses about how we convince folks in all different ways. But I do want to mention, just before I forget, that we're a relatively new track in the English department, but we're growing. And you can see this growth in particular in our club. We have a undergraduate linguistics association club, which is really quite an amazing group. I and another professor, Reyes, are the advisors to the club, and they meet every month at least. They put on talks. They bring in linguists to do and rhetoricians to talk about their work. And one of the biggest things they do is they put on a spring conference, which is the Hunter Undergraduate Language and Linguistics Symposium. And I think it's the 10th year of that this year will be, and we're still going to do it online, it sounds like. And it's maybe the only undergraduate linguistics conference in New York City. It gets students from across CUNY, from across, actually we've had students come from, I think as far away as California to present. So it's a really special thing you can work on and be in. You don't have to be a linguistics track major to be in that club, but it's just one of those things where it's that connection we have as faculty to bring in our own colleagues and work, and then the students get exposure to that environment. And the presentations at that kind of conference are always, I'm always amazed that it's like graduate level work. You know, a lot of those students that present do go on to graduate school in linguistics and rhetoric as well. So it's just one of those special things. I know there's other creative writing groups and student engagement groups in the other tracks, but I can particularly vouch for the linguistics club as one of the great parts of our program. Yeah, I think I can wrap up there, Sarah, unless there's something else you want me to tell about my particular track. But yeah, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah. So a couple of elements of the major that I want to mention are independent studies and internships. So one opportunity that students have is to work one-on-one with faculty members of their choice. And this counts as a class. You get 3 credits for it, but you get to pick what you want to talk about. You get to pick the texts you want to read in consultation with your faculty advisor. And so really you can create a whole class for yourself. And sometimes what students do, and actually I did this a little while ago, is if a few students, like 2 or 3 students, essentially want to have a study group together, working with a faculty member, you can do that as independent studies. So you can even have an even more intimate situation than you would have with a seminar where you're working really closely with a couple of other students. I have a pretty robust internship program. Obviously, it's a little more difficult now, although we do have students who are doing their internships remotely. And I think our internship program shows how broad the application of the English major is, because we've had students working at nonprofit organizations, a press that put out graphic novels. One student worked at a university press. We've had students intern at advertising firms, at marketing firms, with theater companies. We had one student intern at Poets House, which is this big poet. And we have a faculty member whose job it is to coordinate and advise on internships. So that's a part of the major that I think is really, really useful for students. I want to talk a little bit about our adolescence education prep track as well, because that's a track that we haven't really talked about. So that's a track that we share with the School of Education. So students do part of their major in education and part of their major in English. So it's really designed for students who want to go into middle school and high school teaching. It's rigorous, but it's really one of the best preparations for teaching that you'll get in the city. We really stress preparation in the study of language and literature for our future teachers. That we think that's a really important preparation for students. And to be honest, as someone who had kids in the public school system. I was always excited when one of their teachers got their degree from Hunter because I knew that they were going to be really great. We've just also reworked our major. So it has a real sort of structure to it. So you'll start off taking English 252, which is the introduction to the major. The kinds of things you're going to be doing in the major. It's sort of, you know, the gateway into the major. Then we have a few required classes. The early American survey, so from the beginnings to the Civil War, an early British literature survey from the Middle Ages all the way up to the 18th century. We also require a class in either African American, Asian American, or Native American or Latina literature. And we also require classes across the historical spectrum. So, students often feel very anxious about taking a class that's from an earlier period. As someone who works in the 19th century, I understand that. But in fact, ironically, we've had students, a lot of our students who've gone to graduate school are medievalists. They love the Middle Ages. Why? I do not know. Well, it's exciting. It's an interesting period. But we really have terrific faculty teaching in every area, every period of history. Oh, that was my cat. Yeah, so you've taken those, you take the surveys, and you also take an introduction to literary criticism, which is a really exciting course. It's kind of a mix between literary analysis and philosophy. We also allow students to take one class in a discipline outside the major and count it as part of their major requirements, because we're really invested in sort of interdisciplinary research. So we'll have students take classes in anthropology, in one of the other languages, in psychology, in sociology, in political science, even in Africana, Puerto Rican, Latino studies, in Asian American studies, and they can count those, one of those courses towards the major. Many of our students also double major, which is kind of nice. Hunter students tend to double major a lot because we do have such a wide array of majors available. So we've had students major in English and mathematics, English and chemistry, English and computer science. And in fact, computer science majors at Hunter have an advantage because several of the faculty in computer science are computational linguists. So we do have students who choose the linguistics and rhetoric track and also major in computer science, and they can kind of combine those interests. We also have a very vibrant English minor, if you're interested in the minor. It's only 5 classes, and it's pretty open, the classes that you can take, but that's also, students choose that as an option. So I think that is all I have to say for the moment. Obviously, I'm seeing questions in the Q&A, so we'll be happy to answer questions afterwards.
Awesome. Thank you so much for such a good overview. There are definitely a lot of questions coming in. So before we jump into the Q&A, though, I do want to introduce the students here to Ben, who's a current student at Hunter and can provide a little bit of information about the student perspective. So Ben, all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Irina. So hi, as you just heard, my name is Ben. I am an English major and I am currently a junior at Hunter. Minoring in Japanese cultural studies, but that's not important for this event. In my experience with the English major, I have found, myself taking a wide variety of courses, both in the literature analytical department, as well as the more creative type of courses. And as someone who generally leans more towards creative writing and that kind of more free side of English. I actually found that my experience with both types of courses at Hunter has been quite enjoyable. You know, I've taken both courses in the workshop and in the analytical side. I've taken a multitude of courses in both of those, and the professors really, you know, care about the students, and they really make classes which you might think are going to be boring, they make them interesting, and they really get you to engage with the material in ways that you might not have thought of before. I know personally I took a class, I believe it was like British literature from the 1800s or something like that. And I knew when I went into it, I was completely, you know, I didn't have any high hopes or anything. I was very much dismayed that I had to take the course. But thanks to the professor, you know, I was really able to engage myself with the various texts that we looked at, and really, you know, even like with things that I thought would be complicated, you know, with the language and all of that, I found myself able to not only understand the text, but also, as I mentioned, engage with them and learn new things about not just analyzing literature, but just in general about writing. And, you know, as someone who wants to be a writer, I found it helpful for me to grow as both an as both an analytical reader and as both a writer. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ben. Stay on for questions. I think the first question that came in is kind of cool, and probably one of the questions that you don't get enough. So what is there a mission or a philosophy for the English department at Hunter? Sarah, you want to take that?
Yeah, that is a terrific question. Yes, I would say there is. I mean, what our goal is, I would say, is to introduce students to the variety and diversity of literatures and languages in English. That's really our major philosophy. Which is why we don't just focus on British and American literature, but also Caribbean, post-colonial, so African literature written in English. And I would say that our goal is to have students learn how to be effective writers, sensitive readers, and effective speakers and arguers. But I would say primarily it's that it's sort of to open up the world of literature and language to our students. And that, I think, includes the creative writing major, right? Because what the creative writing major does is really teach students the craft of creative writing. And that's what our workshops do, as Ben mentioned, where students will share their writing and critique each other's writing with the guidance of the instructor. So there's a sense that you are always growing as a reader and as a writer. You're always growing as a thinker.
Awesome, thank you. I think that was probably one of, yeah, go for it.
I was just going to mention, because Sarah mentioned how the major had been redone recently a little bit, and I don't know if you mentioned that we have these advanced seminars as this 400 level seminar, and I think that's another piece that where every one of the tracks has this you have to take this 400 level course now, which is going to be a smaller course for sure, with a professor where you are going to be really applying what you've learned throughout. So it's like a general, I think, mission of each track that you read lots of different things, and then you have this chance to really apply it to your own interests. I know for the linguistics, the mission would really be then you're going to collect your own data about language and how language is used and analyze it yourself. So it's going to be a much more creative type of course where you're not just reading other people's work, but then applying it to your own interests. So I think that kind of connects to all the tracks, the way we've shaped the major.
Awesome. I think the next question is sort of related to this. Outside of just the academic side, the classes and tracks that there are to take, are there any resources available for students who are English majors in the form of like a college newsletter, article writing technique, or clubs or anything like that? Do you have anything within the department you can mention?
So we've had an English majors club. It kind of waxes and wanes with the interest of students. But often we'll have, a group of students who really want to get the English majors club moving again. Sometimes it's a reading group. That's kind of how it works. Students will read a book together and talk about it. Sometimes it's been creative writing students who've wanted to share their work independent of classes. There's also a literary journal, which is not directly affiliated with the English department, but English majors always run it, which is called the Olive Tree Review. And that, I think they come out twice a year, maybe?
Correct. It's a semesterly publication. Yep.
Okay, yeah. And so that's something that English majors really get involved in. So there's all kinds of things that students can do. And also I would say we are very open to events that students are interested in seeing. We sometimes get speakers to come to talk about their work. We also sponsor sometimes students going to the theater or even going to a museum exhibit, doing sort of outside activities that's funded by the college to help enrich what they're learning in class.
I was going to add that there's a bunch of different resources that are not necessarily affiliated with just the English department, but offer a lot of sort of opportunities in events for students. So for those of you who may not have seen this on our website yet, there are actually 4 student-run publications at Hunter. One of them is a literary journal. There's the Olive Tree Review. There is our very own, it's called the Hunted Hero comic book. So if you're interested in writing for that, you can do that too. So there's a few different sort of smaller things that happen at a large community, not just within the English department, which is kind of cool. Something that's worth mentioning too is that we have an entire Office of the Arts at Hunter. And students who are part of that sort of arts office, you're not necessarily doing anything every single week, but if you do become part of that community, you would get updates on different events and things that are happening that are, again, not just at Hunter, but within New York City as a whole. So students go to things like museums, talks, and meet with authors and things like that. That's sort of built into this Office of the Arts. So while you're going to be a part of a small community within the English department, you can also be a part of sort of larger Hunter family and still have that access to a lot of different things too, which I find to be pretty cool.
Might have been kind of, there was this part of what kind of other jobs people might, or part-time jobs. I know a lot of English majors work at the Writing Center as tutors because they are good writers and they've also learned how to analyze language. And so I know that's a great position. There's, depending, it's in person usually, but now it's online. But I think that really connects with your English majors working at the Writing Center.
I was just about to say that too. There are 4 learning centers at Hunter too, and one of them is a Rockowitz Writing and Writing Center, and that's really where our English majors shine. They've helped me with graduate paperwork, trust me. Our English majors on the undergraduate level have helped me with graduate school stuff, so I appreciate their help more than anything. And even in these virtual times, they actually offer all this support virtually too, so that's kind of cool. You could still have a job on campus without being on the actual campus. We're going to pivot just a little bit. Students are asking questions for Ben. So Ben, students are asking, you mentioned that there's small classes. Can you talk about some of the classes that you've taken? What were they about? How was it, lecture style or discussion style? Things like that.
Yeah, so I've taken, as I mentioned, both analytical English courses as well as creative writing workshops. And in both cases, they're both kinds of classes have been more geared towards discussion, where you'll do a lot of the written work on your own at home or whatnot, and then bring in whatever ideas you've formulated or written down to the class and discuss with your peers and with the professor. As I think I mentioned, I'm not sure, but the classes that I've personally taken are generally pretty small. I would say the analytical or more literary courses tend to be bigger than workshop courses. But I think, for workshop courses, you benefit from the smaller size as, you're giving feedback generally to a multitude of writers. So having more, students in a class would just mean more stuff that you need to read through and give feedback for. So but you still get good, very, very good feedback from the workshop courses, despite the smaller class size. I mean, besides you being required to take some for the English major, I would recommend you take some anyways if you are looking to be a writer, because I found that the students, as well as, of course, the professor, really, really give great feedback on your work, and they just help you to grow, and become a better writer, which is, of course, the whole point of, learning at Hunter in the English department and whatnot. So, yeah, overall, I would say that class sizes vary and the experience kind of, it's always enjoyable, but usually the classes are not too large. I've never taken like a lecture hall English class or anything.
Yeah, all of our classes cap at 30 students.
Yeah.
Not something that many other departments can flaunt about.
Sorry, Irina, what did you say?
I said not something that a lot of other departments can flaunt about, definitely.
No. I mean, that I think is also one thing that students really love about our major is you're not just a faceless person in a huge lecture hall. Your professor will know your name. They will write comments on your papers. They will be in touch with you. So we don't have any classes that have more than 30 students in them.
Awesome. I know that Paul and you both mentioned internships as part of this whole sort of English department outlook on our students. Students are asking, have students in the past gotten internships in publishing houses? And is that something that the English department will assist with overall?
Yes, absolutely. So what can I think of recently? So recently, someone got an internship at Columbia University Press, and someone got an internship at, I think, Random House, like one of the big presses. And yes, so we have an internship coordinator who works closely with the Office of Career Services. And there's someone in the Career Services office who is dedicated to working on internships. So yeah, I mean, internships can work one of two ways. Either a student will come and say, I really want to intern, I've been in touch with this particular company or organization. I really want to intern there. Can we make this happen? Or a student will say, I'm really interested in interning in publishing, or I'm really interested in interning in advertising. What connections do you have? And then the student will work with both our internship coordinator and the person in career services who's in charge of internships to find a job that's good for them. We also have a relationship with book agents. So, people who sign authors and do publicity for authors. So we've been quite successful with that as well. Yeah, so if you're interested in publishing, English is an excellent major to be in, and we do have some connections there.
I actually want to add on to that, if you don't mind. A lot of students, being in the middle of New York City for Hunter is sort of a huge perk. Does that help English majors in any way?
Oh God, yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we are the center of the theater world, the publishing world, the PR world, the advertising world, the marketing world. New York is the center of all of that. Or even, if you're interested in going into finance, business. One thing that, so I'll just tell a little anecdote. So often I will be at a party, not recently, but often I will be at a party and people say, oh, what do you do? And I'll say, oh, I teach in the English department at Hunter. And I'll say, what do you do? And they'll be like, oh, I work in some financial capacity, right? And I'll say, I've heard that that often businesses really want English majors. And every single time, I do not lie, every single time the person will say, yeah, totally. Because we can teach what you need to know about finance on the job. What we can't teach is critical thinking, reading, real analytical reading, and persuasive writing. And that's really what people need to do in the business world. That's, and also being able to present your ideas in front of a group. Often in our classes, we'll have students do oral presentations, either individually or as a group. So you get used to doing research, writing out a presentation, and then presenting it to the class. So all of those skills are useful in the business world as well. I have this running joke with the chair of our economics department. I'm like, oh, you don't need to be an economics major to be an economist. You just learn that on the job. You should be an English major. So yeah, I mean, New York is such a hub for so many different kinds of industries. So that the fact that Hunter is, in the heart of that is invaluable.
Awesome, thank you. You've also mentioned a few different tracks today. I love this question because I really would know the answer to it. So I'm glad you guys are here. The question is, which track would have the least Henry James in it?
Oh, as someone who does the 19th century, you have put a dagger through my heart. We do actually have a class on Henry James and Edith Wharton, but you can avoid that because it's an elective. I think you could probably go through the English major at Hunter, even in the literature track, never having to read Henry James if you choose carefully. So I would say any and all.
It might be the linguistics track that might work better.
Absolutely. Huh? But I also want to say that as someone who teaches Henry James, I would hope that I could, whoever asked that question, I would hope that I could make you love Henry James. When I teach the first half of the US survey, quite early on, we read some Puritan writers. And I always say when we start that module of the class, I'm like, it is my job here to make you love the Puritans. You don't know that you do, but you will. And, it's interesting, like afterwards, they're like, yeah, this material is really great. It's really interesting. I thought it was going to be super scary and difficult, but in fact, it's really fascinating. So I think it's not what you read, it's how your professor introduces you to it and helps you enter into the text.
So thank you for that. I thought that was pretty brilliant, and I wouldn't know the answer to that. So I'm glad you guys were here. Another general question is more about the honors program within Hunter's English department. How do students get into that? At what point do they apply? Do they apply? What's required?
Yeah, so we have an honor society. Delta Sigma Tau, I think. Is that right? It's those three letters, and I don't remember what order they're in, I'm sorry. And we have a faculty member who is the faculty advisor for that group. I think you can apply to be in it in your sophomore year, depending on how you're doing. There's a GPA requirement. I think you have to have a 3.5 GPA in order to be eligible. And actually, it's a really great group. I know I've been talking to the faculty member who advises them, and it seems like the students make a really nice community amongst themselves, and they also will have reading groups and writing groups amongst the group. So when you come to Hunter, get in touch with me and I will put you in touch with the person who is in charge of that. I would say as well, we also offer honors in the major. We have special honors seminars that are seminars of 15 students. And you can take an honors seminar in literature, but also I think there are creative writing honors seminars as well. And it's at the 400 level, so it's at the, the highest level. And that's where I think you need to have 24 credits in the major already. So you need to be either a second semester junior or in your senior year. And you have to have a 3.5 GPA in the major. And that's where students really get to do sort of intense analytical work. And I've taught a couple of those seminars, and I would say sometimes they're really on the graduate level, like the students are exceptional. And I've always been impressed by our students. One other thing I want to say as well, and obviously it's early days for the students who are in this group, but we also have a pretty good record of placing students in graduate programs, both on the MA and the PhD level. We have an MA program in which has 2 tracks, one in literature and one in adolescence ed as well. But many of our students in the MA program go on to PhD programs all over the country. We've placed people at Harvard, at Cornell, at the CUNY Graduate Center, at University of Iowa. I'm trying to think. Those are the ones that leap to mind. So, you know, if it's probably a little early to think about this now since you're just starting college, but you know, if after a few years you think, I'm interested in going on to more advanced study, we work very closely with students on their personal statements, on their writing samples, so to, you know, to make them really attractive candidates for graduate programs.
Awesome, thank you. I think the English department, to me especially, to an outsider, seems like one of the fewer departments that has a very hands-on approach with the students. So you kind of figure out what they like and how they like it, and then you kind of help them individually, which I think is pretty cool for a pretty big department too.
Yeah, I mean, we have almost 900 students in the major. You know, we are the largest English major in CUNY, and one of the largest English majors in the country, actually. Even, you know, larger than many institutions that have a much larger student body than Hunter does. But we've always had a very strong major in English that's always been popular.
I love it, personally. I have a lot of students who graduated with you guys. So
great.
I think that pretty much concludes. We were able to get to most of the questions today. Want to say a huge thank you to my presenters for being here with us today. Really appreciate the time you spent talking to our future Hawks. For the students who are in the room, there are a few basic reminders I want to get to you. One, if you think Hunter is your home and you want to become a Hunter Hawk, remember that you have to commit to Hunter by May 1st. You can do that right in your CUNY First, right under your application. It takes a couple of minutes, but you can do it as early as today if you'd like, but don't forget to do it before May 1st. Now, second item, if you have questions that are specific to our students, if you want to know about specific classes that they've taken, what type of courses they're taking, or maybe what favorite professors are, or maybe you want to learn more about the location and how they're utilizing that for their major, for their internships, or anything else. We have something called our Unibuddy platform. And if you go back to the accepted student page, which is where you signed up for this to begin with, you're welcome to sign up for the chat with students option. There's a little link for that. It takes you directly to our current students within a lot of different majors. So Ben is on there. He'll be able to answer any of the questions you have. And I'm putting the chat with student box in the chat as well. Now, last but not least, there are plenty other Hawk Talks that we have happening for the next 2 months almost until May 1st. So if you have an interest in anything else, if there are academic interests or if there are student life things, we have a Hawk Talk coming up about student activities, one about residence life, a few more about School of Education, psychology, sociology, whatever else you may be interested in besides English. Highly recommend for you to check that out. The faculty is looking forward to meeting you there. So once again, congratulations on your fall 2021 acceptance. We're very excited to welcome you into our class, and we hope we get to meet you very, very soon. So have a good one. Bye.